We are getting reports early this morning that there may not be a government shutdown. It may be averted. Schumer is actually talking to Donald Trump. Schumer has been calling Trump an effing liar, using the F word. There is talk that they may sever the DHS funding bill from the overall budget and work out some way to rein in ICE. From what I'm hearing, Trump was actually amenable to that to avoid a shutdown. I'm surprised. We may not be looking at a government shutdown for Friday. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. I'll have more on that in a couple of minutes. Fulton County, Georgia officials confirmed that the FBI seized 2020 election records from two warehouses. The warehouses contained information about the 2020 election, paper ballots, images of ballots, voter rolls, and tabulator tapes. The FBI confirmed they were acting with a court-ordered warrant that Pam Bondi's Justice Department was able to get a judge to sign off on. Bondi is widening her investigation into the thoroughly debunked myth that Joe Biden stole the 2020 election from Donald Trump. The Washington Post reporting that in tandem with 3,000 federal agents pouring into the streets of Minnesota, Attorney General Pam Bondi continues to pressure Governor Tim Walz to turn over information about the 2020 election and this year's midterms. Right after the killing of Alex Preddy on Saturday, Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a letter to Governor Walz outlining how he could bring an end to this immigration enforcement in his state. Bondi said, topping the list of conditions for the federal government to withdraw from Minnesota, topping the list is for you, the governor, to turn over to me and the Justice Department Civil Rights Division voter rolls, along with confidential information containing Social Security numbers and driver's licenses of registered voters. Bondi said she was enforcing the 1960 Civil Rights Act to ensure voter integrity. Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon, who oversees elections for Minnesota, called her letter blackmail and a ransom note. Simon responded to Pam Bondi with, "The answer is no." Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut called this a shakedown. This happened right after Alex Preddy's murder. Bondi's Justice Department attempting to seize voter rolls in several blue states. Democrats accusing Bondi of trying to seize the voter rolls in order to intimidate Democrats from voting in the midterms and to use these documents to sow just enough confusion to perpetuate the myth of voter fraud, which doesn't exist. Voter fraud doesn't exist. In his first administration, Donald Trump set up a commission to look into voter fraud. They couldn't find any. Voter fraud is a lie. Voter suppression, keeping Americans from voting, that's real. And Republicans use the lie of voter fraud to pass voter ID laws that suppress the vote. Well, it's been almost a year since Joe Biden left office. He became president because voters had grown weary of what we're experiencing right now. Trump's contrived chaos, 6 news cycles a day, coupled with complete incompetence. President Biden issued a statement on the murder of Alex Preddy, the 37-year-old ICU nurse killed by Border Patrol officers on the streets of Minneapolis early Saturday morning, while Preddy was trying to protect a female protester from one of those federal agents. President Biden said of the killing, Minneapolis events betray our most basic values as Americans. President Biden said, no single person can destroy what America stands for and believes in, not even a president. If we, all of America, stand up and speak out, we know who we are. It's time to show the world. More importantly, it's time to show ourselves. It's been a year. Hard to believe we had a president who talked this way. Joe Biden, by the way, defeated Trump by 7 million votes, not just in Georgia, but Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The FBI is investigating Tuesday's attack on Congresswoman Ilhan Omar at a town hall. Omar was calling for the abolition of ICE and the impeachment of Noem when a man rushed at her, spraying the Congresswoman with the contents of his syringe. Preliminary reports are that the syringe contained apple cider vinegar. Congresswoman Omar said after the attack, quote, "I don't let bullies win." And if you watch the video, she chased after the man who attacked her. Police arrested Anthony J. Kemarizak, 55. He lives in Minneapolis. The Independent reporting Congresswoman Omar continued her town hall, reminding the audience, "I don't intimidate easily." She added, "I survived a war." The Congresswoman came to America when she was 8 after spending 4 years in a refugee camp in Kenya to escape the civil war in her home country of Somalia. House Minority Leader Democratic Congressman from New York City, Hakeem Jeffries, blaming Donald Trump's incessant attacks on Ilhan Omar for fanning the flames of violence against her. In an exclusive interview with The Independent, Anthony Kemarizak, the suspect, has a brother, and he was interviewed by The Independent. Anthony Kemarizak's brother said the alleged attacker has hated Somalis for decades, and he then referred to his brother as a right-wing extremist. Anthony Kemarizak's brother telling The Independent, "In my mind, he's a piece of S-word," and said the actual word. The Los Angeles Times reporting this morning that Anthony Kemarizak's social media shows he's a big Trump supporter and has a criminal record. Well, all you had to tell us was he's a Trump supporter. The criminal record is implicit after that. The attack on the Congresswoman came just one day after Donald Trump announced the Department of Justice has launched an investigation into the source of Ilhan Omar's husband's wealth. Trump said on Monday, "She left Somalia with nothing and is now reportedly worth more than $44 million. Actually, her financial disclosures, which she made last year, they show that her net worth is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million tops, not $44 million. I guess Trump forgot he's only supposed to inflate his own self-worth. He's only supposed to inflate how much he's worth, especially when he's refinancing mortgages on his crappy buildings. Ilhan Omar is married to a venture capitalist who owns a winery, so there's money, and she's disclosed it. Doesn't matter. In Donald Trump's world, something is fishy because everyone he knows who's worth that much has done something illegal, so it only follows Ilhan Omar's husband must have done something illegal as well. The Independent reporting that Trump supporters went into hyperdrive after the assault on the Congresswoman, immediately calling it, quote, a false flag scam. Former shock jock turned political pundit Matt Walsh, who describes himself as a theocratic fascist, well, he's a huge Trump supporter. After the attack, he said, quote, "It's all fake, even if it wasn't staged, though it may have been, it's still fake." Laura Loomer, a close advisor to Trump, she's responsible for countless career professionals inside the executive branch getting fired last year because she said they weren't showing sufficient loyalty to Donald Trump. Loomer, after the attack, immediately took to social media and said, quote, "Nobody cares about your staged victim propaganda. Please go back to Somalia. We are getting really tired of people like you taking up space in our country." You might remember Laura Loomer flew with Trump to Philadelphia on September 10th, 2024, for his debate with Kamala Harris. On the flight, she reportedly advised Trump to spread the lie that Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, are stealing local pets in order to eat them. And he went ahead and spread that lie during the debate. The Atlantic magazine reporting that Trump began to distance himself from Laura Loomer in the lead up to the November election. Not because Loomer is a loony, it's because he was appalled by her plastic surgery. He couldn't look at her face because, according to The Atlantic and other sources, he didn't like her plastic surgery. She still has, however, some pull in the White House, able to get people fired when she accuses them of disloyalty. In other words, she despises people who are two-faced. The woman who no longer has FaceTime with Donald Trump because of her face doesn't like people who are two-faced. She still has some influence. So where would all these MAGA trolls get the idea that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar staged the attack in order to draw attention to herself? Right after the attack, Donald Trump accused Ilhan Omar of, quote, having herself sprayed. President of the United States. Unbowed, Congresswoman Omar spoke the next day, that would be Wednesday, at a shopping center in Minnesota that's frequented by the Somali community. The crowd shouted, "ICE out." She was joined on stage by fellow squad member, Massachusetts House Democrat Ayanna Pressley. In the past month, Trump has called the Congresswoman garbage, who comes from a garbage country that stinks, and he keeps threatening to deport her. The Congresswoman says every time Donald Trump makes comments like that, the number of death threats against her skyrocket. Florida House Republican Randy Fine has repeatedly called for Omar to be deported and denaturalized. Randy Fine said her citizenship should be revoked. With a yarmulke on his head, this is what he says. Fine, just like Laura Loomer, is Jewish. Last year, Randy Fine, who is Jewish, called for the forced removal of mainstream Muslims living in America. Randy Fine, with a yarmulke on his head, on December 16th said, quote, "This has to stop. Diversity is not our strength. Diversity has become suicidal. It is time for a Muslim travel ban, radical deportations of all mainstream Muslim legal and illegal immigrants, and citizenship revocations wherever possible. Revoking the citizenship of Muslims in America." He goes on to say mainstream Muslims, he says, have declared war on us. The least we can do is kick them the hell out of America. Those are the words of Congressman Randy Fine. Now, he proudly wears his yarmulke, but he has views identical to those held by the Alternative for Germany party, made up of neo-Nazis. This party came in second last year in Germany's parliamentary elections. Alternative for Germany is calling for the mass expulsion, just like Randy Fine, of all Muslims living in their country, whether they're citizens or not. This is the same thing that Randy Fine is calling for. Well, Randy Fine, Congressman Randy Fine, with the yarmulke on top of your head, you'd be right at home with the Alternative for Germany leadership, who have been welcomed with open arms by the young Republicans of New York City, as well as Vice President J.D. Vance and Elon Musk, who's donated millions to the Alternative for Germany party, Randy Fine. But hold on to your yarmulke, Randy, because the Alternative for Germany party also believes it's time for Germany to stop feeling guilty about the Holocaust. The founder of Alternative for Germany called the Holocaust, quote, just a speck of bird poop in over 1,000 years of successful German history. Other leaders of Alternative for Germany have been convicted of using Nazi slogans and imagery that have been banned in the country. So tell me, Randy Fine, you're Jewish, you wear a yarmulke. Are you going to show up at CPAC when they invite someone from Alternative for Germany to speak? Congressman Randy Fine mocked the attack on Congresswoman Omar, saying she just experienced, quote, a peaceful protest. And then there's Megyn Kelly, who has her own show on Sirius after getting fired from NBC for not understanding what's wrong with white people in blackface. Here is Megyn Kelly a few weeks ago praising self-described Nazi Nick Fuentes, who has a huge following among young Republicans, so much so that Tucker Carlson's brother is reportedly a big fan, which is why Tucker had Nick Fuentes on his show. Here is Megyn Kelly normalizing a Nazi, Nick Fuentes.
He's very interesting and he's very smart. And on a lot of things, there is value to be derived from that guy's messaging. I'm sorry, but he actually has a lot of things he talks about that you're like, oh, this is not a bad point about our country.
Here is Megyn Kelly getting fired from NBC in 2018.
And she made her skin look darker than it really is. And people said that that was racist. I don't know how that got racist on Halloween. But what is racist? Because truly, you do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface on Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up as a character.
And here she is not getting fired from Fox News back in 2013.
And by the way, for all you kids watching at home, Santa just is white.
Right, and so is Jesus, she said. Well, on Monday, according to The Hill, Megyn Kelly, after all those videos were released clearly showing that Alex Preddy was holding a cell phone and was shot 10 times after the gun was removed from his body, Megyn Kelly went on her Sirius program and said she didn't feel sorry for Alex Preddy because, quote, he was resisting arrest, just like George Floyd. Just like George Floyd was resisting arrest. Do they get to see videos from an alternative universe that we don't get to see? You know, we're coming up on the 6th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, and I know racists like Megyn Kelly take advantage of America's very short-term memory. We have a short-term memory. So this is a picture of George Floyd resisting arrest, as Megyn Kelly called it, as Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. In April of 2021, a Minnesota state jury found Chauvin guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison, where he's now serving. But I guess Megyn Kelly, the same woman who insists Santa and Jesus are white, the same woman who sees nothing wrong with blackface, the same woman who says we need to listen to Nazi Nick Fuentes because he's smart and has some great ideas. I guess if you're Megyn Kelly, you're going to say George Floyd was resisting arrest. Don't believe the video of George Floyd's murder, and don't believe the video of Alex Preddy's murder or the video of Renee Good's murder. Don't believe that. Believe your cold, dead, racist, bigoted, and fascistic eyes. Believe what your fascistic eyes see. Remember when Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, who's in his early 80s, was hit over the head with a hammer by a home intruder? That was October 28th, 2022. 2 years later, on October 29th, 2024, David Wayne DePop was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But right after it happened, Megyn Kelly said, I know enough to smell a rat. Yeah, you just queefed. Right after it happened, she was talking to Senator Tom Cotton, who right after George Floyd was killed, Tom Cotton called on Donald Trump to send the army in to quell peaceful protests held by Black Lives Matter. Those were peaceful protesters until people like Kyle Rittenhouse showed up, or until the cops showed up. We've been over that. Here is Megyn Kelly, the day after Paul Pelosi was hit over the head. Here she is with a wink and a nod, hinting that the police, the San Francisco police, were covering up the fact that Paul Pelosi was entertaining a male prostitute because it's San Francisco. That was the rumor that the right wing was spreading, that Paul Pelosi knew the guy, and it was some rough trade that got rough. Here she is asking why the San Francisco police didn't shoot the guy before he hit Paul Pelosi over the head.
How do you have police officers on site and an 82-year-old gets attacked with a hammer in front of you when you have a gun as a police officer?
Right. Did you watch the videos show they were trying to de-escalate without firing their weapons? Mary Moriarty is the Hennepin County DA and said she will decide how to prosecute Congresswoman Omar's attacker later in the week. Despite being muscled out of the investigation, denied access to evidence, she says she is investigating the murder of Renee Good as well as the murder of Alex Preddy. She said she is getting zero cooperation from the federal government on both. Keith Ellison is Minnesota's state attorney general. There's a new narrative, a false narrative, emerging that since Saturday morning's murder, Trump is softening. Because why? Because he says he's softening? Because he fired Greg Bovino? The mainstream media is trying to convince Americans that Trump was shaken up by this killing, and he's going to tone it down. But this just isn't true. It's getting worse in Minnesota. Keith Ellison says he's getting zero cooperation from the federal government on the investigation into Preddy's murder. Ellison, along with the governor, Tim Walz, and Secretary of State of Minnesota, as I mentioned earlier, right after the murder of Preddy, got a letter from Pam Bondi informing them that all of this could come to an end if the state of Minnesota would just cooperate with her and help her investigations into voter and welfare fraud. Keith Ellison telling the Washington Post that the 3,000 federal agents on the ground in his state have nothing to do with immigration enforcement. He said Trump is punishing Minnesota for not voting for him and for not cooperating by turning over the voter rolls. Todd Lyons is acting director of ICE. On January 6, 2026, Tobe Robles, an Ecuadorian national living in the United States for 30 years, was detained by ICE as part of Operation Metro Surge. A week later, the chief United States District Judge for the District of Minnesota, Judge Patrick J. Schiltz, ruled that ICE must bring Robles before the court for a habeas corpus hearing, or they must release him. And that order was completely ignored by ICE. They didn't bring him before the judge, and they kept him in detention. The judge said, "My patience is at an end," and he ordered Todd Lyons, the acting head of ICE, to appear before him. The judge said, "I'm sick of my orders being ignored." Here's what he said. The court acknowledges that ordering the head of a federal agency to personally appear is an extraordinary step, but the extent of ICE's violations of court orders is likewise extraordinary, and lesser measures have been tried, and they have failed. The judge accused ICE of ignoring nearly 100 court orders involving 76 Minnesota individuals detained by ICE since January 1st, 2026. Judge Schlitz clerked for Antonin Scalia and is a George W. Bush appointee. He said the due process violations in the month of January caused, quote, significant hardship for long-term residents who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Unquote. Well, the judge rescinded his order for the acting director of ICE to appear in his courtroom after Tobe Robles, that Ecuadorian national who lived in America for 30 years, was finally released from detention. Pam Bondi was in Minneapolis to announce the arrest of 16 Minneapolis protesters who she charged with assaulting federal officers and interfering with their work. Bondi said it's just the tip of the iceberg, with more Minneapolis protesters expected to be arrested. Border czar Tom Homan, who replaced Greg Bovino as the point person on Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota, Tom Homan says he wants to create a database of protesters. Appearing on Fox News, Homan said there's going to be a name and shame database of people arrested for actions like interference, impeding, or assault on ICE agents. He said, we're going to create a database where those people that are arrested for interference, impeding, and assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are. Bondi did just that in announcing the arrest of 16 Minneapolis protesters, calling them violent rioters. Pam Bondi posted pictures of 11 of the protesters she ordered arrested. U.S. Magistrate Judge Dulce J. Foster, overseeing the arraignment of those 16 individuals, lashed into Bondi for posting their pictures on the internet. Judge Foster said, quote, "This conduct is not something that the court condones." She reminded Bondi that all Americans who come before the courts enjoy the presumption of innocence. And it's really stupid to do this, because when it goes to trial, it hurts the prosecution. Interesting thing about Pam Bondi, the more water she carries for Donald Trump, the less respect he demonstrates for her. There are leaks emanating from the Oval Office, from him, that Trump is very unhappy with Bondi's performance and he's looking to replace her. So the more she does for him, the more he cuts her off at the legs. Again, the narrative from the mainstream media is Trump has softened since the murder of Preddy. Why? Because he gave Governor Tim Walz a call. The truth is, he's getting more vicious. And despite reports of a drawdown of federal agents in Minneapolis, immigration arrests are amping up. The BBC reports Trump telling reporters if they, Minnesota, would just give us their criminals, all of this goes away. Trump is accusing local law enforcement of releasing immigrants after they've been arrested without turning them over to ICE. So this is what Trump is complaining about. People in Minnesota are arrested all the time and then released, either because charges have been dropped or they're awaiting a court hearing. But thanks to the passage of the Laken Riley Act last year, immigrants, any immigrant, can be detained and then deported by ICE. Why? According to Laken Riley, because they've been arrested and or charged with a crime, not convicted. That's Laken Riley. If you're an immigrant and you've been charged with a crime, you get detained and deported. So Trump is now pressuring local police in blue cities, especially right now, Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul. He wants local police to turn immigrants who've been arrested over to ICE once they are released from jail. But local police are not cooperating. Trump is downplaying the effect his invasion of Minnesota is having on the residents, the effect that it's having on businesses. They're losing hundreds of millions of dollars because of this. And of course, it's not safe. It's not safe to live in Minnesota now. He accused the local leaders of using these immigration raids as distraction. This is what he said about Jacob Fry, the mayor, and the governor overreacting. He said, a lot of what is going on with respect to Minneapolis, what's happening with all the hoopla, is so people don't talk about the fraud. I have said it from day one. It's a distraction. So the protests, Tim Waltz, Jacob Fry, they're using this as a distraction from this welfare fraud. Well, as they say, every accusation is a confession. I love that expression. I don't know who came up with it, but every accusation for Donald Trump is a confession. Another United States citizen was shot and seriously injured, this time on Tuesday in Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff's Office says 34-year-old Patrick Gary Schlegel remains hospitalized and in critical condition after being shot in the head and leg, although details of the wounds are a little sketchy. Despite being hospitalized, he is in federal custody, charged with human smuggling, as well as firing his weapon at a Border Patrol helicopter and at agents before being taken down. No officers were injured. Politico reporting that the Democratic Party is circulating a memo saying new polling shows Americans have soured on Trump's deployment of ICE agents to blue cities. Other polls are showing that more Americans right now are concerned about the infringement of their civil liberties than they are this so-called immigration problem. And that is why Chuck Schumer is pushing so hard on not voting to fund the Department of Homeland Security for fiscal year 2026. And it's why a government shutdown late Friday is a possibility. Although we're getting, as I said at the top of the show, we are getting reports that Senate Democrats and Trump are discussing some kind of agreement to hive off the Homeland Security funding from the big spending package to negotiate new limits on what ICE and Border Patrol agents can do. Time magazine reporting that the Democrats have 3 demands to avoid a government shutdown, and it involves specifically reining in ICE and Border Patrol. The first demand, according to Chuck Schumer, is to put an end to these roving bands of ICE and border agents. Schumer wants ICE agents to go through proper channels in order to get a warrant, specifically a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. Administrative warrants are signed by a Homeland Security Administration official, not a judge, despite the lies told by Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, who just lies. He said, no, they have judges at Homeland Security who sign off on those administrative warrants. That's a lie. An administrative warrant is signed off by somebody like Greg Bovino, and Chuck Schumer wants ICE and Border Patrol using judicial warrants to kick open doors. Schumer says he wants ICE and border agents held to the same standards as regular law enforcement, especially when it comes to the use of force. Schumer said, third, quote, masks off, body cameras on. Schumer said they must at all times carry with them visible identification. He said, no more anonymous agents, no more secret police. What do you think? Leave a comment. Is it worth shutting the government down to rein in ICE? I think it is. I think it is. But who knows? Who knows what Russell Vought, the head of OMB, has planned? You can shut this government down and Donald Trump will make sure it doesn't reopen until after the midterms, which means what? What? The New York Times reporting that on Tuesday, masked agents try to force their way into the Ecuadorian consulate in Minneapolis. The Vienna Convention on Consular Relations was signed in 1963. It stipulates that all foreign consulates are off limits to their host country. Police are not allowed to enter without permission from the consulate's government. Ecuador's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Human Mobility lodged a formal diplomatic complaint accusing an ICE agent, masked, attempting to go past security guards at the Ecuadorian Consulate in Minneapolis. Video reviewed by the New York Times and Reuters shows the masked ICE agents screaming, quote, "If you touch me, I will grab you." 5-year-old Liam Ramos is an Ecuadorian national who was used last week as bait by border agents right after he returned home from preschool. They forced Liam to knock on his family door so his mother would come out so she could get arrested. ICE agents instead ended up grabbing Liam and his father, despite the mother and people from Liam's preschool begging ICE to let them hold on to Liam. Instead, Liam and his father ended up in an ICE detention facility 1,000 miles away in Texas. Lawyers for the family say they are asylum seekers who came to America in 2024 and were awaiting their asylum hearings. They had filled out all the paperwork. They were crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. We are now getting reports that 5-year-old Liam is depressed, has a fever. They say he misses his mother and friends from preschool and is crying. Really? That seems kind of weird. A 5-year-old dragged away from his mother and friends, and he's depressed? What's that about? On Wednesday, a federal judge issued a temporary injunction blocking ICE agents from deporting Liam and his father until they have had their asylum hearings. The BBC reporting that on Thursday, Texas Democrats Joaquin Castro and Jasmine Crockett visited Liam and his father. Congressman Castro told Liam's father, quote, "I demanded his release. I told him how much," this is what Castro said he told his father. So he said, "I demanded his release and told Liam's father how much his family, his school, and our country loves him and is praying for him," unquote. So that's 5-year-old Liam sleeping in his father's arms. He's being held inside the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, reportedly vomiting, unable to eat the food. Protesters outside the detention center were hit with pepper spray by Texas state troopers on Tuesday and Wednesday. And I just, on a personal note, everybody who's out protesting peacefully, you are heroes. You are heroes. All of you. My sister is out every day. God bless you. There's new reporting on Alex Preddy's interactions with border agents leading up to his execution early Saturday morning. New video surfacing that shows border agents had Preddy on their radar after a violent confrontation with him 11 days before his killing. New reporting that 5 ICE agents, 11 days before his execution, broke one of his ribs while violently tackling him to the ground. A lawyer for Alex Preddy's family responded to these videos and says nothing that happened 11 days before could possibly justify his killing. Max Shapiro, an eyewitness who videotaped this encounter 11 days before Preddy was murdered, he said Preddy spotted an unmarked convoy of ICE SUVs that were arriving. It prompted Preddy to hurl expletives, spit at the cars, give them the middle finger, and at one point he kicked out a taillight on one of the SUVs. So if that's true, you don't kick out the taillight of an SUV. A separate video of that encounter was posted by a conservative blogger. It shows Preddy being thrown to the ground and a gun, you can see a gun, tucked into his waistband. Minnesota is a right-to-carry state. He had a license to carry one. He wasn't pointing the gun, and he didn't use it after his rib was broken. Shapiro, the witness who videotaped the incident, said ICE agents overreacted to Preddy kicking the taillight of their SUV. Shapiro telling the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, quote, "Is it grounds for getting out of a car after you've already packed up and decided that you were going to leave and then assault a person and harass a group of observers? Probably not." Shapiro, according to the Minneapolis Star, is a lawyer. He said when Preddy was being beaten up, he did not fight back. He only attempted to run away. Separate videos show ICE agents punching Preddy while he was being held. So you want to talk about the gun? It's a right to carry state. He was being beaten up by ICE agents, never reached for the gun. Never. The Department of Homeland Security is conducting a preliminary investigation into Preddy's killing. Remember, the Department of Homeland Security, ICE is part of the Department of Homeland Security. USA Today reports that this preliminary finding says Preddy was killed by two border agents who fired their guns. The New York Times has seen the memo. They say the Department of Homeland Security's preliminary investigation says nothing about Preddy pointing a gun at the Border Patrol officers. This despite Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, and Greg Bovino all saying he was pointing a gun. They called him a domestic terrorist. Stephen Miller called him an assassin. Bovino and Kristi Noem said Preddy was planning to massacre border agents. CBS News also confirming that this preliminary report says nothing about Preddy aiming or holding a gun in the lead up to his murder. So Donald Trump is pretending to be upset by this. But all reports are that immigration raids and threats against Minnesota officials, protesters, and residents have only intensified since the killing. Acting like he's remaining above the fray, Trump says he wants an honorable investigation into Preddy. Do you think we're ever going to see the body cam footage? Trump told reporters, "No, I don't believe Preddy was an assassin." He did throw Greg Bovino under the bus. Appearing on Fox News, Trump said, Bovino's very good, but he's a pretty out there kind of guy. And in some cases, that's good. Maybe it wasn't good here. So they're looking for somebody to blame, and they're blaming Bovino. Stephen Miller, who called Preddy a domestic terrorist and an assassin, changed his tune on Wednesday, saying it now appears the agents who shot Preddy, quote, appear to have breached protocol. Well, there's a major power struggle going on between the head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, border czar Tom Homan, and Stephen Miller. Knives are out, and Kristi Noem is desperately trying to keep her job. And she's now saying everything I've done at the direction of the president and Stephen Miller. But Lindsey Graham said, be careful trying to get Stephen Miller. This is what Lindsey Graham said. When this clock strikes 12 on the Trump era, there will be a few people walking out the door with Donald Trump. Stephen Miller is in that group. I want everybody to know on the Republican side. In other words, if Kristi Noem thinks she's going to win a street fight with Stephen Miller, Donald Trump is going to side with Stephen Miller. So what you got right. Oh, there's, by the way, this is Lindsey Graham this is Lindsey Graham investigating conditions inside the ICE detention facility in his basement. This is him. That's Lindsey Graham investigating conditions inside the ICE detention facility in his basement. So there is a power struggle right now between where am I? There we go. There's a power struggle. You got Kristi Noem and her alleged boyfriend, Corey Lewandowski, who are trying to cling to power, while border czar Tom Homan is trying to get rid of her and Corey Lewandowski. Now, Lewandowski thinks Kristi Noem is presidential material. Well, she's certainly stupid enough to get the Republican nomination. I mean, she qualifies to be a Republican nominee for president. So what's going on? Is Trump going to get rid of her? No. Trump knows that she's looking at the 2028 presidential race. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars of Department of Homeland Security funds on these glamour shots, these commercials showing her in action. She's running for president. And Lewandowski was her campaign manager when she ran for re-election as governor. And he wants his mistress, alleged mistress, to be the next president. So what is Donald Trump doing? He's keeping her around. Why? He wants her in that job just long enough so there's a paper trail that makes it impossible for her to run against him in 2028. He's going to keep her. He told Fox News she's doing a great job. She's doing a good job, and he's not going to get rid of her. Not going to get rid of her. But calls for her impeachment are intensifying. Democratic Senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, he's gone to the dark side. He's been with Trump on a lot of issues, especially the border, but now he's calling on Donald Trump to fire Kristi Noem. Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, also demanding that Kristi Noem be fired. Hakeem Jeffries told the president, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. What is the hard way? Jeffries is threatening to bring articles of impeachment before the House using special privilege to bypass Mike Johnson. Remember how slim the majority is in the House. All it's going to take is 3, possibly 1 Republican to defect, and she's impeached. It is the slimmest of slim majorities. You know that border bill that everybody was so upset about that got passed in the House? Why did it get passed? Because 7 Democrats in the House voted for it. Had those 7 Democrats voted against it, that border package would not be in the Senate right now. It would have died in the House. That is how slim the Republican majority in the House is right now. There is a possibility that Kristi Noem, just like Alejandro Mayorkas, her predecessor, will be impeached. Doesn't mean she's going to be removed. She will not be convicted in the Senate the same way Alejandro Mayorkas wasn't convicted in the Senate. So Trump is pretending to soften. He's playing to the mainstream media. He's saying, I'm going to de-escalate a little bit. He's not. He's ramping up the fascistic raids in Minneapolis. He's completely out of control. This is 25th Amendment time, but his cabinet is too terrified. Well, how does Donald Trump show remorse? Well, he's mentally ill. Only a mentally ill person would say this publicly. Rolling Stone reports that Trump said, I feel terrible about the death of Alex Preddy, but I feel even worse about the death of Renee Good. Well, why would he feel worse about the death of Renee Good? I guess it's because she's the mother of small children. No, he said, because her parents voted for me. Things are going to get worse in Minneapolis. He's not dialing it back. He's amping it up. And Mayor Fry knows that. Jacob Fry said, I made it clear that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws, and that we will remain focused on keeping our neighbors and streets safe. This infuriated Donald Trump. He took to social media and said, could somebody in Jacob Fry's inner sanctum, please explain that this statement is a very serious violation of the law and that he is, quote, playing with fire. And he put it in all caps. So you tell me he's showing remorse. He's not. To Jacob Fry's credit, he said, the job of our police here in Minneapolis is to keep people safe, not enforce federal immigration laws. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. I'm going to do more shows. This is a crisis. I feel we need to know the facts, so I'm going to try to do another show tomorrow. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civilized. Leave a comment if I made any mistakes. Let me know. I do my own research here, so if I made a mistake, let me know. Thank you for listening to me. Please like this so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to my newsletter, subscribe to my channel, and shadow banning. You know what's going on. So if you can get the word out, I would appreciate it. It's, okay. I will probably see you tomorrow. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.